Good morning. This is John from the Springs Mennonite Church, and I'm here continuing this conversation with about a guy named Jacob. And we've seen that he's deceived his father and now gone to his uncles. And when he gets there, the story gets even more complicated. Let's look at Genesis chapter 29 and begin with verse 14, and we'll read a few verses. After Jacob had stayed with Laban for about a month, Laban said to him, "You shouldn't work for me without any pay, just because we're relatives. Tell me how much your wages should be." Now Laban had two daughters. The older daughter was named Leah, and the younger one was Rachel. There was no sparkle in Leah's eyes, but Rachel had a beautiful figure and a lovely face. Since Jacob was in love with Rachel, he told her father, "I'll work for you for 7 years, if you will give me Rachel, your youngest daughter, as my wife." "Agreed," Laban replied. "I'd rather give her to you than anyone else. Stay and work with me." So Jacob worked 7 years to pay for Rachel, but his love with her was so strong that it seemed to him just a few days. Well, you know, we don't do that anymore. We don't buy brides, though I guess in some places in the world they probably still do. Um, we don't spend a lot of time picking out our bride, or a bride's picking out her husbands. Now, in biblical times, Old Testament times, particularly Jacob's time, the bride didn't have a choice. It's hard to imagine that in our world today, that the woman had no choice who they were going to marry. Except that happens a lot in other places in the world. We are quite different from these days, but we're not different in some other ways. So the story goes that Laban, his uncle, said, "Gee, you shouldn't work for me for nothing. Uh, how much should I pay you?" Have you ever had someone ask you, "How much should I pay you?" Usually it goes the other way around. "I'm paying this." "Well, could you pay a little bit more?" And it just, really strange here. But Jacob says, "Look, what I really want is your daughter, Rachel, your youngest daughter." Now it says here that Leah doesn't have a sparkle in her eye, and it says that Rachel had a really good figure, and I get the feeling that Leah was kind of bland, nice, great person, but nothing particularly uh, beautiful about her. Rachel, on the other hand, must have been quite a catch. So Laban says, "Tell you what, after 7 years, you can have her." Talk about sort of a crass way to deal with your kids. But in any case, that's what Laban says. "Okay, it's a done deal. 7 years working for me, and you can marry her." And so it says here that Laban worked, Jacob worked for 7 years, and it seemed like just a few days. I guess Rachel was so enticing, and Jacob was just so enamored by this beautiful woman. So now we read. Sounds like a good bargain. And then we read, starting with verse 21, we read this. "Finally, the time came for him to marry her. I have fulfilled my agreement," Jacob said to Laban. "Now give me my wife so I can sleep with her." Well, the idea of sleeping with someone was the seal of the covenant of marriage. And still today in our laws, if the marriage hasn't been, oh, what's the right word? If it hasn't been sealed, then you're not actually, well, it's easy to get a divorce, I'll put it that way. So this action of sleeping with someone and sharing physically with them, would seal the deal. Then Jacob would have Rachel. Sounds like a good plan. Sounds like a simple plan. But sometimes simple plans don't turn out to be so simple. 22 says, so Laban invited everyone in the neighborhood and prepared a wedding feast. But that night when it was dark, Laban took Leah to Jacob, and he slept with her. Laban had given Leah a servant of Zilpah to be her maid. When Jacob woke up in the morning, it was Leah. What have you done to me? Jacob raged at Laban. I worked for 7 years for Rachel. Why have you tricked me? Now, Laban isn't quite as easygoing as he first appears. They have the wedding, and when it gets dark, Laban swaps Rachel for Leah. And in the morning, I don't know how Jacob didn't notice, but in the morning, he realizes what's happened. And it says, and he raged at Laban. Why have you tricked me? You know, it's interesting. The guy who tricked his brother and his dad is now complaining because he got tricked. You know, sometimes what we do happens to us down the road. And that's exactly what happened here. Well, Laban goes on to explain in the next few verses that it's not customary to marry off the youngest daughter until the oldest one's been married. So they come to an agreement and said, okay, you work another 7 years and then I'll give you Rachel. So here's Jacob stuck for another 7 years. I don't know all that transpired in those times. I don't know how Jacob felt about Leah, except they had a lot of kids. But somehow or another, during this time, Jacob begins to change. And it's interesting how God uses circumstances, even what we perceive to be bad ones, to begin to work change in our lives. Now, I don't know where you are in your walk with God. That's up to you. But I do know that God is constantly working to bring us to the place where he wants us to be. And the encouraging news here is if you've gotten some interruptions to what you planned, don't get too excited about it. It might be that God's plan includes something you weren't expecting. In the end, God always wins. So we can relax. If things didn't work the way we thought, okay, God's still in charge. I don't know about you, but I had a lot of things in my life where things didn't work out as I planned. And you know what? With as many years as I hope to have left, I'm sure there'll be some more. Well, you think about that. Hope you have a really great day. I'll be back tomorrow and finish up this week and then take the next week to finish the story about Jacob. But for now, if you have a need or a concern, let us know. We'll do whatever we can as fast as we can to help meet your need. Thank you so much for listening. Hope you have a wonderful day. Take care. I'll talk to you again.